Most companies have a GTM strategy, but very few have a GTM that actually gets the money. If your go-to-market feels like a series of broken spreadsheets and missed targets, it's time for a system update. Welcome to GTM, get the money live. I'm Chris Ryan and I'm Leoparillo, your host, and we're here to install the operating system for your revenue. We're moving past the theory and getting into the high-stakes execution of what it takes to scale in 2020 fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, another episode. Welcome out to GTM, Get the Money Live. My name's Chris Ryan. I have Cpby Pachmayr on today from IdeaSpring, who I'll introduce in 1 second. Today's an exciting conversation. It's all about AI, but not the AI you expect. What we've found is that most companies have an AI strategy, or they think they do. And what they're really running is an AI pilot program. What we're going to review today are the top AI mistakes that most companies make, the gaps that they cause, and more importantly, what happens if you don't fix them before your competitors do. So, Coby, welcome to the show. Please tell our guests something about you.
Yeah, well, let's see. So I'm founder of IdeaSpring and have been involved in automation and technology and helping companies solve complex problems for last 20-something years. And now more recently, obviously, with AI, no way to not incorporate that these days. And, currently we've been building a lot of technology and ecosystems around AI and AI harnesses and, helping companies discover, where and how to fit AI into their workflow. So.
And I want to set the table, Coby. I'm excited you're on the show. And there's a lot of AI people out there nowadays, a lot of AI guys and girls with a lot of content, some good, some not so good. And I think the difference, and I've been working with you for a few years, you're in the top 1% of the AI minds out there. And I'm very serious about that because I've seen what you built on the back end. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today are just the surface level that most companies are making. But when we were talking before, you take a contrarian approach to AI. Can you explain what that means to our listeners?
Yeah, I think one advantage of being in business for a while is that you get used to the hype cycles, right? And so very early on, and it turned out to sort of pay off, is that we didn't buy into the hype. We explored for ourselves, got under the covers to try to understand how AI really works, and realized that where we saw the market going in the hype to sort of when people are selling shovels, right? They'll tell you the solution is dig more holes. And so we kind of just said, all right, where do we think this is really going to land? Where is it really useful? Where is it not? Where is it going? And so, so we've just sort of taken a contrarian view. We started out with the premise that, AI is stupid. And so, and then how can we make it, but it is useful. And so how can we make it better? So,
AI is stupid. And I'm glad that you said that because I was listening to somebody the other day and they said, AI is great at just resourcing information, but it looks at the smart people the same as it looks at the dumb people. Mm-hmm. And itself, and I think a lot of the hype cycle you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, are people just experiencing this level of FOMO or this level of like, I absolutely need to use this tool to get this cutting edge for my company. I'm going to be behind. So what does contrarian actually mean from a production standpoint? Like, what are you building that's contrarian from a contrarian perspective?
Yeah. Like, so, like early on, we basically saw all the interaction with AI and sort of like, and to this day, I still see it's mostly focused on one person, one agent, meaning the context is often here's how I should be communicating, or here's how you should use AI. And it's still very much like a one person, one agent kind of view. But we think in the, enterprise business things, business level, that it's going to be critical to avoid some of the mistakes with that. And then start looking at how do you have multiple humans working with multiple agents together collaboratively. So from the beginning, so I wouldn't say maybe contrarian isn't quite the right word. I mean, it was contrarian earlier, and then but now that sort of has proven to be correct, and we see the market moving that direction, and that, like, hey, we can't have shadow systems out there. We can't have, we really shouldn't have shadow AI. We need to be able to work together, and that kind of stuff. Or to put it in even other sort of common terms, as we see a lot of content around people talking about creating an individual brain for themselves. But we've been thinking about, how do we make the organizational brain? How does the agent that you're using on your computer and the agent I'm using on my computer to make us individually more productive? How do we bring that together so that the organization is more productive together, and there's awareness of the parts that the organization needs to benefit from the individual effort, while at the same time sort of trying to prevent things like, making sure that information people shouldn't have isn't available. So
putting the governance in place and making sure that shadow AI isn't happening unless it's intentional. So the company is organizing the organizational brain, as you said. Mm-hmm. So for people that don't understand what shadow AI is, like, can you just explain that in a few words?
Yeah. So basically, I'll start from like typical shadow systems. Like when we're working with companies and trying to uncover how data and decisions are flowing through the organization and our discoveries, we talk about shadow systems. And so a lot of times what we see is the tools don't quite work. So people will create shadow spreadsheets, for example. And so now it's become a critical part of their workflow, but nobody really knows about this spreadsheet that they've been using, that kind of thing. So that's what we call sort of about the shadow. It's sort of the shadow governance and shadow government of the organization. And so from the shadow AI perspective, what we see is people are using AI to try to make their work more productive, sometimes on their own, sometimes by company mandate, right? Like they'll roll out Claude Teams, whatever from Anthropic, and then say, here, now use this, as if that will make people magically more productive. And so we have people, using AI on their own, and nobody really knows what's happening, right? There's really no oversight into how people are using it. So you might have an individual who's using AI to create reports for clients, but you don't know that they're using AI, or you don't understand what rigor is going into how they're using AI, and is that data even accurate?
It makes sense. Coby, tell me, what are the top mistakes that you see most companies making today? And not in order of priority, just mistakes that could be avoided, or mistakes that could be damaging.
Yeah, so I think, so I can think of several, but I would say the common thread through all of them is just not understanding that AI is an amplifier of the intelligence that you bring to it. So the mistakes that I see the most often are really just the various ways that people bring nothing to amplify, right? And so, I would say, like, the first one that comes to mind is just, again, not really understanding how stupid AI actually is, right? Like, it's in the name. It's artificial intelligence. It's pretending to be intelligence. It's not actual intelligence, right? It's at the end of the day, it's a really powerful, but still just a prediction machine, right? It's not a truth machine. And so it will always give you an answer. That's its job. But knowing whether it's the correct answer is your job, right? So a wrong answer that looks wrong might cost you 5 minutes, but a wrong answer that looks right could cost you a deal, could cost you your reputation, that kind of thing. So I see a lot of people just generating stuff without really any thought into, because AI is amazing and powerful and on the surface, people tend to, for whatever reason, trust it. and so when it confidently puts out wrong answers and people pass that off as being valid, can create problems.
And I think that's so understated, because I see that on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, we've been deep in AI since it started, but the trusting factor, and it makes you feel good. Let's be honest. Like, it doesn't matter what LLM you're using. usually feels pretty good. It makes you feel smarter when some of the outputs, and again, it's not bad, but when you say the intelligence that you bring to it, is that your AI intelligence? Is that having the systems in place? Is it a little bit of both? Like, how does a user bring the right intelligence to AI?
Yeah. So no, and so I think even though this is a bit like a lot of things with AI, it's a lot of oversimplification, but it's you hear the calculator analogy a lot, right? And so, if using a calculator is a lot easier than doing longhand, mathematics. Both will allow you to put a man on the moon, but you have to understand what you're calculating to even achieve that objective. So, in other words, it's the authentic intelligence that you bring to it that matters most. However, that doesn't mean you need to be an expert in everything that you use AI. Part of the authentic intelligence that you bring to it is knowing your limitations, what you know and what you don't know. And then instead of relying on AI to give you the answers, a lot of people would benefit from just using AI to teach them what they need to know. And a lot of times this doesn't even mean you need to become, say, a rocket scientist, but you can have it explain the information so that you as the human can make the decisions, right? So in other words, leverage AI for its ability to gather and apply expertise in context, but where you need to make decisions, just don't answer blindly, have it explain, teach, right? And learn the patterns and principles so that you can, gain experience and bring that to it.
If you're a leader, you don't need to go out and teach your entire organization to be AI masters. But it's important that they understand how AI works. And more importantly, and I'm surmising here, but understanding when AI is filling in the gap. Because I think that's where that predictive intelligence causes problems. Again, it feels good, it looks good, it makes you feel smart, so you think it's the right answer, and we're all moving too quickly. But is that kind of sound advice and where we're headed?
For sure. Yeah. I'm laughing because, you're talking about, because AI wants to make you feel good, right? I always tell people I'm really smart. Just ask my mother and ChatGPT. Right. And so, so I think it's understanding how it works under the covers is really valuable. If you kind of understand where the landmines are, then you can use the parts that are really good to your benefit while avoiding those landmines, right? And so, yeah.
And we talked about the organizational brain, and I think the organizational brain is to, for lack of a better term, is to build that fact-checking methodology behind the scenes, to be able to build the governance behind the scenes, because not everyone's going to be experts, and you're not always going to recognize. Walk me through another mistake that you've seen a company make or is currently making that you were like, man, I just need to tell them to stop doing this.
Yeah. No, that's the one thing I would say is I see a lot of people in the rush to adopt AI to improve, say, organizational efficiency. They try to put AI everywhere. And so they're trying to use AI to automate everything. And instead, what most companies really need is sort of the, I guess what we would call the quote unquote old fashioned, automation to get the answers correct and more cost effectively than through AI, right? So I see people, attaching their database to the AI and just asking questions, for example. And then they're spending a huge amount of time, whatever the processing time is, could be minutes or longer to get an answer that you're not even 100% sure of, where, a database query could have answered the question in, near 0 seconds and been correct, kind of thing. So I see people jumping all on AI rather than really just say, hey, where can we automate these things through other automation tools that we were using?
Or just human common sense, right? Like if you want to know something about strategy, go talk to the strategist in the next office. Like it's one thing that AI can help you. Don't get me wrong. We're not the old guys saying, get off our lawn, but realistically, like don't over rely on AI. Okay. And you see that often. Like you see people just using tools or LLMs or anything they possibly can for, I don't want to say mundane things, but things that they could find out faster?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So like we have a client that, you know, are using AI and they're on a good path for adoption. But in that, because you can connect something to AI doesn't mean you always should. And so sometimes they're asking AI to go gather information or content from these various systems that are connected to AI that AI can communicate with. But then what was a 5-minute response, spending a lot of tokens and dollars and time, could have just been a simple dashboard to give that same answer, and like, oh, I just look here on my dashboard and I have that information that I need. I don't have to ask AI every time.
Let me ask you a question. This has nothing to do with AI. Like, is this more of a human condition of laziness where we just think like this is the fastest solution to be able to get us the answer and it's good enough for me to trust? Like, is that the core issue here? Is that the root issue, or is this just, I want to do something the opposite of that? I want to do something really good and leverage technology the best way possible.
Well, kind of like how I was talking about AI being an amplifier of what you bring into it. That's the other. I don't know whether this would fit into a mistake category or not, but basically what I have seen is that how people work generally, say pre-AI, is being amplified by AI. So in other words, people who take shortcuts in what they do view AI as a shortcut machine, and that's going to have its own set of problems. We're just amplifying, how fast that occurs. At the other end of the spectrum, people who are resistant to change and don't want to innovate and, and say are resistant to AI, we see them not use it. It's amplifying that too. In other words, it's amplifying. You see the people who are in the sweet spot using it correctly, increasing what they're able to produce. It's amplifying that. And the people that are resistant to changing and doing things differently, it's amplifying that. And that now all of a sudden you see this disparity between the people who are innovators, producers, forward thinkers from, the people that just want to keep doing things the same way. And I'm not one of our other contrarian views is I'm not about change for change's sake or technology for technology's sake. I mean, but you want to have a strategy, know why you're doing it and where. But we definitely see some people that are, it's really just amplifying it's amplifying what the human brings to it. If you're a shortcut taker, you're going to use it to create shortcuts. So,
and I mean, this show is all about solving revenue for growth and revenue for good. And that's a good point. And I think there's a lot of fear happening in AI right now. And I think a lot of people are like, AI is going to replace me. AI is going to do this. For me, it's the largest opportunity. And the opportunity is not from the technology. It's awesome. I love it. I use it, every chance I get, hopefully the right way. But it's the opportunity of the majority of the people are taking shortcuts. So you and I have been around the block long enough in our careers. We've seen these kind of these jumps in technology and in business. And the one thing I always see is the people that take the shortcuts, and I'll get off my soapbox in a second, ladies and gentlemen, but they win in the short term. But the people that learn the system or the technology or whatever it is end up leapfrogging them and have exponential growth. So your approach, our approach, if you're out there building an AI strategy, like that's the approach, is to take time and to build this right, because you will leapfrog the people that are seemingly winning today. So again, off the soapbox.
Again, it was either sheer luck or brilliance or something in between, but that's kind of the approach that we took with this is like, and part of it was just in self-survival mode, because in the, with say ChatGPT becoming more ubiquitous, right? I mean, we've sort of dabbled in AI over the years, but then with the sudden exponential growth in the last couple of years, it was hard not to get that fear of missing out, right? And like, oh, I better get on this or I'm going to be left behind or whatever. And it was anxiety making. And so just out of self preservation, we said, we need to pick a strategy. We need to know where our North Star is. Where are we going with this? Where do we think this is going to land when the dust settles? And that allows us to give up chasing every bright, shiny object or hype personality that says you need to do this or you're going to be left behind. Right. So, so having a clear strategy, being willing to take the slow approach and steady approach, doesn't mean you don't explore. I think people should explore all of the tools, but the more you understand how those tools work, you kind of understand what they're really bringing, not bringing, or whatever. And, you don't have to get every ounce of precision. And, so maybe there's a different model that might be marginally better, but if you don't understand how to implement the AI strategy in the first place, it doesn't matter what model you use. Just focus on getting better at how you implement AI, then figure out, the right tools, the right, ways to use it.
It's very sensible what you're saying. And I think if you're a leader out there, like, ask yourself that exact same question, like, as opposed to any other part of the business. Do you ever just jump in and then try to be reactive as quick as possible because that's how fast the market is moving? Or do you take the time to think about being strategic, think about going into this market, selling this type of product, how we address our customers? AI is the only world that I can see or think of off the top of my head where people are just so reactive because they're freaking out. But no leader that I know will ever do that or adopt that philosophy across their entire organization. And again, maybe it's just the fear and the rate of increase of this, of the speed of this technology, but that's kind of a light bulb moment. So thank you for sharing that. What else do you see, Coby? Like, walk me through anything else that's big mistake.
I think it's chasing the model and chasing the latest thing, and whether that's OpenClaw or any of the other things that go viral, and then this is what you have to be on. And how many times do we see in our content feeds the words "it's all over," right? Meaning like, oh, somebody's won, and then that lasts for about 2 weeks, and then something else comes up, and then like now it's really all over, And so, I think. Sort of, because like I said, there's a common thread into this that, all these mistakes are just variations of the same sort of thing. So of understanding that AI is really just a prediction machine. It's not a truth machine. It amplifies what you bring to it. So kind of the same way. And another example of how we took a contrarian view is in the old days 2 years ago, right? And I would even argue there's even a more fundamental shift, like November of last year was a big pivot point. But being involved early on when the market was chasing, say, larger and larger contexts and allowing humans to be sloppier with the, inputs that they were putting in, I think the mistake I see is an over-reliance on the model, meaning like, oh, I use this model because it has these benchmarks or whatever, rather than really understanding the power of the model comes from the harness you wrap around it. Whether that harness is what the frontier model providers like Anthropic or OpenAI put around their model, or the models that you build yourself, right? So that's what we did. Like, so for example, we figured out that giving AI models very precise, small problems to solve and then stitching those together was much better than one big complex prompt trying to do it all in one shot kind of thing. So early on. So that's what we call atomic context engineering. Like, hey, what's the smallest unit of thing we can have AI help us with, and then stitch all those things together. And now the buzzword currently is harness, right? So really, that's what we're really talking about, is it's that mix of using AI where you need to leverage AI decision-making around the fuzzy parts of intent and categorization and, contextual understanding, but then mixing that with code and processes and steps that you can run consistently and then plug those things together. So I see people chasing, well, now let's try this model because it's supposedly smarter, rather than saying, how do we use AI within our business? What are the touch points that AI makes sense? What are the normal automation rails we should be using? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I like the short answer the short, simple answer, because you're probably doing that, and I don't mean to assume, but you're probably doing that because you can get the answer right, and then that informs the next answer. So some sort of like chain of thought, like reasoning. So that's really interesting, because I think when I use AI, I'm talking to it. I'm in the car. I'm having these big strategic, visionary discussions at 4:30 going to the gym, which never really works, but they still make me feel good.
Right.
The other part of this, and you and I talk about this all the time, is the over reliance on thinking the tools are the solution and not the team. And you and I talk about this, I think, every time we meet. It really is about the team behind that, because you've enlightened me to this factor that it's about building this plug and play network to be able to not be over reliant on the team or the tool, and not be over reliant on, one system. It's to be able to build an organizational brain, to use your words. Like, can you talk about, like, I'm butchering this, but can you talk about it in your language on why the team versus the tool? Because I would say 99% of the market is thinking tool.
I think this is another area where, well, let me take it this way. I'm going to go back to sort of old school automation. There was a time frame when no code and low code solutions were supposed to be the panacea. So pre-AI, it was, hey, let's remove the IT and developers from the equation, and let's give people tools like make.com and Zapier and other tools, or we'll do these other no code reporting tools. And now every employee will have the ability to get the answers themselves. No need to involve IT. And that sounded good, but in reality, when people don't understand how data moves between systems and they don't understand APIs, really all those systems ended up doing was just building a new form of worker or skill of being good at using no code and low code, systems to automate or get the data that you needed. And AI is just another variation of that, meaning, so I think it's going to be important for companies to have a team, not a tool. You could hand out AI, like you could sign up everybody for Claude Teams subscription and give them access to, tokens to use an AI, but that doesn't make them smart at AI just because you gave them the tool. And it doesn't help them understand data and the landmines and other things that are around, that go into using it productively. And we've discovered there is a mindset, and not everybody thinks the same way. And so, there is some education and things that need to occur to teach people how to use AI properly, even things that, some people take for granted and it seems obvious, and other people it's not obvious. And so, you've got to have the team that can leverage AI, and that either will need to be in an organization where AI and technology is not the core thing they're focused on. Then you should hire a team, to focus on that, because it is changing fast. And you do need somebody who's monitoring all the bright, shiny objects to determine which ones to hang on to. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's not putting an over reliance on the model and thinking about the tool rather than, building the team you need to run effectively.
Coby, you've shared some interesting mistakes that most companies are making. And I think most leaders can identify that these are real problems, right? Shadow systems, shadow AI, people using AI any way they want. Again, not that anybody's doing wrong. It's just that there's not an appropriate strategy in place. I do think it's very interesting for like the over reliance on AI to just, go to the next office, like I said, or just find the information yourself. The team versus the tool. And I think probably the biggest takeaway that I've had is understanding how AI works and a predictive tool. And I never actually thought to use AI to help me understand that, but I think that's a great takeaway. But if I'm a leader, CEO, and I have to walk in Monday morning and this conversation's valuable to me, what's the one thing that I tell my team to do, or what's the one thing that I do Monday morning to be able to course correct before this becomes a huge revenue suck?
Yeah. And I think so. This is sort of one takeaway, sort of two lenses, right? Which is, if you're somebody whose job is dependent on using AI and it's mostly a chat interface, and or maybe you're tasked with just trying to figure out how to make your job more productive, right? Somebody gave you the tool and you've got to start tomorrow and you're not sure what to start. The one thing that I tell people, this comes up quite frequently when I'm working with clients, is that you don't have to know everything. The cool thing about AI is whatever you don't know, just keep moving up that level of abstraction that you don't know and have AI break it down for you simply, right? So in other words, if you're trying to solve a complex problem and you're not sure how to break it down into, less complex steps, ask. Ask it for that. And you can keep working all the way up to a common thing that I have some people who are very beginning, and starting, and they're not quite sure how to prompt or whatever. So we'll take it down to that basic of a level, which is you can ask it to start, sometimes I'll say something like, hey, before processing the instructions I'm giving you, rewrite this prompt to be better and help me understand how I can improve prompting to get better results for this task or whatever, right? I mean, sort of off the top of my head, but you can do variations on that of just, I don't know this, I don't know X, so please help me understand how to do X better, that kind of stuff. And, and even at the technical level, I think it's the same thing. So we use AI to fill in gaps where we don't have physical team members and it doesn't make sense for us to hire those technical skill sets for our small agency. And so, but yet we are the human in the loop that has to make decisions. And so, we set up the feedback systems that we get from the agent to be educational in what we're doing. Hey, not only is this the thing that I need you to answer, meaning us, the human, but here's the pattern or the principle of why this matters, that kind of stuff. So using it to learn as you grow, I think is a thing that most people aren't really doing. They're either at one end of the spectrum where they're just trying to put in their answer, pull the handle and get whatever, magic message comes out. Or you got other people that want to use it to learn and grow, but they're not really sure where to start. And whenever you're asking yourself a question of, I don't know what to do here, that's the question you should start with. If you don't know how to prompt, ask it to show you how to prompt better, that kind of thing.
So the slot machine methodology, that's a good way to put it. The asking AI and building agents, I assume, to be able to fill in the positions that you can't hire for, because that's a real thing. Money's real, people are real to be able to replace. But I think it's really smart to be able to, if we don't know everything that this role involves, have that role ask itself, how do I evolve? Have it ask the human. And I think you gave some really good examples of how you can use this on the day-to-day to just figure out something, I don't say simple, but something simple like prompting. One thing that I always do, because I'm not anywhere near your level of using AI, is I always ask it to challenge my biases. And then I ask it to challenge its own biases. And I get usually really good inputs, or at least it makes me feel good that those are good outputs.
Well, yeah. Well, you highlighted something too, because you were talking about talking to AI and, and I think this ties everything together, the mistakes and then the takeaway that I was giving you. I think the thing to understand is the human language is very imprecise. This is why we have misunderstandings. You send somebody an email or you send them a Slack message, and in your mind, it makes perfect sense because you have the subconscious context of tone of voice. Oh, I was just joking, or what, right? All these things. And that's why we have all these misunderstandings. Well, what happens at the AI level is when you put your request in, those same things exist. You have the subconscious context of what you actually meant. And so what will happen, I guess we throw this in as another mistake, right, is that the mistake is letting AI just make all of those default decisions for you. And so a big part of the ecosystem that we built and the early bets that we made were focused on, surfacing the ambiguities first. So when you're giving instructions, whether it's simple prompt level or you're doing complex, like multi-agent team communications that we're doing, one of the common threads and sort of this, again, also sort of the takeaway is, asking the agents to surface ambiguities or potentials for conflicts first and giving you the opportunity to answer them is the biggest thing that will help people. I mean, because if there's implied requirements in what you're asking for, the agent will make those decisions for you. And that's oftentimes masked by what's really happening. So when you use an advanced reasoning agent through chat, what you don't see that they hide from you is the conversation that's really happening with the agent under the covers. And there are some people who have made YouTube videos showing it. And that would help people realize how dumb AI really is, right? It's really just having a conversation with itself to try to figure out what you meant. And then once it's decided what you probably meant, then it'll come up with an answer. And then, out comes your output. And you didn't see any of that. So a big way to improve the instructions, whether that's a simple level prompt or you're doing complex AI, engineering and automation, is having the agents surface those ambiguities and implied requirements first so that you can answer them. Like, hey, let's make sure we're on the same page before we start building.
I'm laughing for a few reasons. A, because I think communication styles, you and I, our Slack conversations are perfect examples of we just communicate completely differently. We have a hard time understanding. I love you. We get along great, but it's just we have different ways of communication.
Right.
But in this world, I think it's comical on the agent is trying to predict what your intent is or whoever the user's intent is. But that is massively damaging. I don't think there's something more damaging than an agent to assume what your intent is without some sort of guidelines or checks and balances to be able to ask you that. It almost seems dumb that that these systems don't have that built in place to just naturally ask the question. And we see this in advertising all the time. We see this intent. We see this you never know what you search for a keyword versus what I search for the keyword, what that actually means. And you have to try to extrapolate that with data. So way down the rabbit hole, but AI assuming intent seems to be damaging to any leadership team or company out there. So Coby, where can people find you? Obviously you're a wicked smart guy. So where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, best place is really just our website, IdeaSpring.com. And we have multiple ways for people to connect with us on there. Because I'm a smart guy, I stay off social media. So I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, and we have all of the check in the box kind of items, but our focus is really on helping clients through discovery, and that starts through our website.
Well, Coby, thank you for coming on the show. It's been very informative. Our listeners, I know you took something away from this. Again, if you have any questions, you can go to IdeaSpring.com, talk to Coby. Anybody's happy to help you. Ladies and gentlemen, another episode of GTM Get the Money Live with Cpby Pachmayr. Have a great day. Thanks again, Coby.
Thanks.
We gon' live